Hey folks, it's Brian. Whenever there's a fifth Friday or Saturday, it screws our gaming um, algorithm up because I play in a game on the first and third Saturdays, and I run Runequest on second and fourth Fridays, and sometimes they match up, and so I've got 2 weeks where I play two games, and some weeks where I don't play any. and thankfully it's tax season, so the wife's not upset. Anyway, Elderath Session 99. So last time we had killed a bunch of orcs. So there's this fording area along the river here that the loggers use because there's logging on the other side. So we find one of these fording areas and we cross over the river. And then we head east and a little south to find the Dwarven Tower. As we're moving along, though, Emerald impresses upon Wes that he should move south. It stinks here, but he doesn't realize it's her at first. Just, hey Wes, it stinks here. You should move south. So we start moving south and go, oh, that's Emerald. She's smelling something. So Wes mentions that out loud that he can actually hear some birds squawking, like maybe a bunch of birds, like a murder of crows somewhere a little to the north. So we travel north to go investigate. As we get closer, we can see some smoke rising up and the smell of burning bodies. And as we investigate, we find there's a ring of orc heads on spears, and there's a pile of bodies burning. Some of the bodies are left on the ground near the pile, not inside. So Runt looks around. He finds some tracks of someone recent, very heavy. So Runt calls out, announcing the presence of the Warden of the East March, and any surviving loyals should present themselves on pain of death. And we hear a chuckle up from the north, and a gentleman steps out from behind a tree. He's clearly amused. He has a gray cloak, and he bows ostentatiously. My lords, my life is truly in your hands. Wes does ask me if he's ever seen a displacer beast that can fly, because he recognizes these guys are gray cloaks, and we ran into gray cloaks back at the moat house during one of the undead armies coming out, and they defended the gate, if I remember right. There was two of them with long swords, two-handed swords, right? And they were attacking 3 times around, which means they had at least 150% in the two-handed sword, and were fast enough that their strike ranks were 4 or less with those swords. Yeah, it was impressive. Anyway, that's why Wes kind of asked that question, because these guys know stuff. He says, so you still think it was a displacer beast? I'm not aware of any displacer beasts in this area. And Wes kind of convinced, okay, no, we know it wasn't a displacer beast because it's changing shape and stuff. But generally, don't things change into shapes that are things that are, rather than things that aren't? But anyway, he says, I am Bertle, and that's Galdor. Galdor steps up behind a tree. Yes, lords, we are grateful to you for sparing our lives. So discussions ensue about our missing comrade, because they recognize us from, they were actually the two that were at the moat house. And they recognized that Alexander's no longer with us. We got this new guy, Hjalmar. So we're asking questions. We talk about he was taken prisoner, taking the Forglands and the keep in the borderlands and all that stuff. And he says, perhaps we should conclude this discussion in our camp. So we all finish up piling the bodies into the fire. They whistle and their horses come out. We look around and see we don't have horses. And then they walk their horses. They lead us to their camp, which is in a hollow in some rocks. And they've got this lattice structure to help disperse the smoke. And they have provisions here for a few people for like a month. And there's even one crate that is lined with wax and sealed. So we discuss the drake. It turns out it's actually a wyvern. And so they were asked about the circumstances of the whole thing with Alexander. So Runt goes into great detail on our story. The dark elves, the rat monster, the giants, the wyvern, artifacts, the Lorathian temple, the caves, Loranathan Temple within the caves. And one of them says, we have to go warn Kaloth. The other one glances at it like, shut up. And it comes, okay, we work for Lord Kaloth, the Lord of Night. We're kind of looking at dumbfounded. Who? The Lord of Nightwing? We're still doing what? Lady Cheryl? And at that point, somebody mentioned about Nightwing being further south, and so we look at the map. Oh yeah, okay, yeah. And I have at least heard of Nightwing before. I just had to start piecing it together. And so Runt kind of looks at him, causing trouble. Do we need to discuss jurisdiction here? Since this is obviously not lands of the Lord of Nightwing. These are the lands of the East Warden. They mentioned that Lord. They said Calendar at one point. I think they mean Cathal. Is concerned about activities in Molag and in Goldak. We are too. And they've asked, and he has asked these two guys to keep an eye on things up here in this area. They did deny ever being involved in the Battle of Hamlet. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But they did know the Lobstrosity. They called him, what did they call him? Not Bob, because we called him Bob. Maybe they called him Dave. I don't remember. But they called him something else. Okay, so we spend the night. Next day, they depart. And Raymond says, may Lorath walk with you, to which Bertle says, and may Maliki go with you. At that, Wes snaps his head around. What? Because people just don't talk about Maliki. She's not that big and important and stuff. And so he's tucking that away. So people were asking, you want to talk about it? No, we'll let this go for now. We don't have time to divert from now. We need to get on to the Dwarven Ruins. And we go on to the Dwarven Ruins. So we get in the cavern. There's a chamber to the right. It's empty. We're not seeing signs of goblins being in the area. So Wes is watching the north passage. The rest of them move east. But they hear noises to the west. They hear noises. Wes didn't. Because there's actually a cliff opening across the way from where Wes is. They come back, but we can't really see up there. So we start circling around to the north and back around to the west, and it comes up to where this is. There's a large empty chamber area. And then there's actually a passageway that goes to the front of the cave complex with a peephole. So we split directions. Runt and Raymond decide to go down the cliff face, while Wes and Hjalmar go back around to the east and then coming back around south. Well, as Hjalmar and Wes are moving around east to get to the large chamber, they encounter two pair of goblins with bows. One at a north from an entrance and one from the south behind another entrance coming to this chamber area. Wes is going to throw a lightning bolt, but Hjalmar rushes to the north. So he holds off. Change of intent. 5 strike rounds later, he decides to do a hold kind. But before he can get that off, he gets hit with a critical shot with a bow to the abdomen, and he goes down. Almost. No, did he do double? Almost double to the abdomen. So he's got 5 hit points there, and he took 14. But he was providing light with his light spell. We call it the flashlight because it's on the palm of his hand and he can close it and open it and close it while it's running. So when he goes down, the light goes out. Hjalmar's in the dark in front of 2 goblins. He changes his intent to cast Holy Aura, which is going to take him just over 2 rounds to actually do. And he calls out, Wes is down! And then he's going into defensive. He's just defending himself. So Hjalmar and Raymond hear that, so they quickly go down the cliff face and start heading north. The fight then continues because Raymond and Runt. Not Raymond and Hjalmar. Raymond and Runt, because Runt's got the light. They get in the air with it's like everyone can see now. So Raymond comes over to heal Wes. 1 point. But he heals him again. That keeps him from bleeding because he would have been bleeding every round, which gives him up a positive numbers and what's made his Constitution roll. So he comes around and then he casts Sleep 5, which puts 2 of the goblins down, right? And Runt is fighting the other 2. And he puts both of them down. Now, Emerald was attacking one of them. It became more of a distraction. She just could not get a solid hit. Raymond does more healing on Wes, and then Hjalmar finishes off the last few, I think that's 2 hit points. Wes was left down. So they healed that up. And so we go and investigate the remaining chambers. There's the room with the secret door that leads out to the blocked entrance in the spy hole. And then we head north. There's a portcullis that's actually dropped over an entranceway. There's an actual mechanism to open it. So we go through that, and there's a chamber. There's a secret door on the far side that we seem to remember knowing it was there, but we could not figure out how to actually use it. But Raymond uses his devise skill and is able to figure it out. And opens up into a long tunnel. So we follow. There's no indications of movement here. It's very stale and dusty. But Raymond on the other side closes the dwarven door because we don't want any goblins coming up on us. Okay, so this cavern has a side cavern to the right. We investigate it, splits back. There's a slash to the right, clutch of mushrooms. Further on, we come to a big fissure in the ground. Further south, there's a pond of water, more mushrooms. And we're picking these because they're edible. Further on, there's a section with debris from the ceiling that get broken down. Side passages leading off left, north, and south. The south side ends. To the north, we come to a sinkhole. Emerald actually flies down inside it. I see there's something warm down there. And you can actually go around it back into another chamber, which goes back to the original one we were on. But we're not going to go that way because we know that if we get near that sinkhole, we're just going to fall down inside. Whoever's down is going to eat us. Okay. So we get back to the main passage. Runt hears movement up ahead. Sounds like something being dragged. So we start to proceed with caution. There's an opening on the right. That then splits 4 ways. The first way ends pretty quickly. The second way opens into a chamber with passages to the left. Wes hears a rushing, scraping noise up ahead. And then some kind of lizard, giant lizard, comes into view, charging. As it runs over or by us, we do notice there are a number of scars across its flanks. It did bite at somebody. I think it was Hjalmar. But we end up coming to a dead end, but there's lizard droppings in one section, and over to the other side is the actual nest. There aren't any eggs, but there's wreckage of a saddle. And Runt spies a symbol on the saddle wreckage. It's a spider web motif with 3 tentacles or tongues flailing about. There's a side passage going back that's got claw marks on the side of the narrow passageway, so we know that the lizard doesn't have to run on the ground. He can run up the sides. We come back to the main passage. There's a new side passage to the left down the main passage. We come to a Y in the passageway. And here, distant echoes up ahead and to the left. To the right, there's a side passage and a large chamber with another pool and mushrooms. And we circle back around to the main passageway. We backtrack to the side passage to the left. Ahead, dead ends. Further to the left, there's a Y that splits when the lizard attacks. And apparently we're all like in a row. So Hjalmar is actually in front. He gets bit in the abdomen really badly and then thrown. Wes manages to dodge, but does get an opportunity to attack, which turns out to be a crit. So he impaled his rapier into the tail of the giant lizard. And the impaled rapier gets pulled out of his hand. Everybody starts to freak out, but he says, calm down, and he casts Return Staff because his rapier is a staff. So he gives it back. There's more refuse here. Back and to the right, there's more traffic and debris. We go back, and Wes thinks he sees a stalactite move. Runt throws a rock at it. Looks like it may have hit where Wes saw the movement, but nothing happens. So we kind of walk around that area, but then we head back up to the main passage, and that's where we ended. Lots of random investigation of this passageway. And there's obviously drow down here that ride giant lizards at some point. We've gone down 1, 2, 3 layers, if you want to call it that. So we'll see what happens. Happy gaming.